at the age of 46. And I was at work, and it was a Monday morning heart attack at 9 o'clock in the morning, just like he said. I got a call out of a meeting. And for the next 15 years, we looked for answers. We looked for a way that he could get better. And we did that through the medical community. And nothing against the medical community, but what I learned in those 15 years is that heart disease and chronic illness will continue to be treated. You can get on medications, you can have procedures, but it's not going to stop the disease. What it's doing is treating the symptoms. And so after 15 years of leaving doctor appointments and hospital visits in tears, I began to think, okay, it doesn't look like this can ever be cured, so what is the source of this? What is causing this illness? And I also learned that we weren't alone in this, that there was a huge percentage of the American population that were also suffering with this along with us. So now we can go to the next slide. And just as the cardiologist here has told us earlier, since the year 1900, this disease has been progressing. So in the year 1900, the main cause of death in the United States was tuberculosis. And then it was pneumonia, and then diarrhea, and all infectious diseases that people were dying. And only 8% of the population is dying from heart disease. You know, diabetes isn't even on there, and cancer was 3%. Fast forward to 2014, and we see that 33% of the deaths in the United States are caused by heart disease, and another 32% from cancer. So what happened? We eradicated these infectious diseases with the advent of penicillin in the early 1900s, and we exchanged it for chronic illness. And so I began to think, wow, how many people die of heart disease every year, Dr. Cortis?
2,300 daily.
Daily.
26.
Now, if we called it Ebola, everybody be looking for a cure. But instead, we continue to have, surgeries and pills and medications. And so what are we going to do to change this? What are we going to do to turn it around? And I think what you talked about is absolutely perfectly essential. And that piece about nutrition, so important, because as I continued to look for causes, and we could go to the next slide now, I noticed the change in our diet over the last 100 years. In the year 1900, there was only 5% of sugar consumption per person, and today it's 170 pounds. Now, when I say this in large groups, people are usually looking at the guy next to him thinking he's eating 340. But hey, that's not true. We eat it. It's in everything. Soft drinks, 43 gallons a year, and that's actually down from 56. And we could go all the way down into oils, which are not necessarily healthy, as we talked about earlier. Cheeses, meat. 270 pounds of meat a year per person. Do we really need that? But the perfect storm is at the bottom here, the homegrown produce. We went from an average consumption of 131 pounds of homegrown produce a year to 11? What happened? What happened was we left our gardens. And for many of us in this room, we kind of left our culture. There was no time anymore. When I go back to Italy, people don't have lawns around their house. They have gardens. And when I go back to Italy, I'm not going to Florence and Rome and Milano. I'm going to the towns where the local people and my family live. And the Italians had the answer, because that's where all of the nutrients and the life-giving sources of foods that feed us and help to keep us healthy are now gone to 11 pounds. So, and of course the calories have gone up, and the energy saving things have increased. And this is not my opinion. this is from our own government and from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, that we are starting to realize we need to turn this around. Remember I had mentioned in my opening comments that my grandfather wanted a garden. He knew. He fed 11 people from his garden. And the people in Italy are still gardening. And families were getting exercise and communities coming together and working together to produce the food. I like to ask groups, where was all the food before 1950? There was no Whole Foods, no Jewel, no Mariano's, none of these stores. Where was the food? It was in the garden. It was in the basements. It was being canned, fermented, so forth. That's all gone. Now we can keep moving. So, ooh, wow, that's going to be kind of small. But here is the healthiest country index from the World Health Organization in Bloomberg, with the top 50 countries, economically developed countries in the world, have given scores for longevity and health to the various nations, and they published this last year. And guess who, and you probably can't see it from there, but guess what country is the healthiest?
Italy.
Yes. The healthiest country on the planet is Italy. Our culture. And you know why? Because they have community. They don't have the stress. The families are together. They're gardening. They're eating the foods. They have the quality. Their oil is not coming from 7 different countries. I've visited the harvest time, and I've been told we don't export. The Italians will buy everything we have. My own family grows their own olives and presses it, and that's the oil they use. We have moved so far from that. And you can't see it on here either, but the United States is number 34. So with all of our technology, and all of our food and our medical equipment, we're number 34 for longevity. Pretty interesting. So another thing I just want to mention before I go on is that we also learned that disease is 25% due to our genetics and 75% due to epigenetics, which is how our lifestyle is, how we play out our genes. And I like to mention this because I have patients that come to me and say, it's just my genetics. My father had this, my mother had that, I'm going to have it. And it's not just genetics. If it was just genetics in 1900, people would have been dying from heart disease at a much greater rate. So this was an article from Time magazine, and it is very much as to how we live. We can either play out our gene, we can let our genes express themselves, or we can work with our genes to remain healthy. So I find myself going to Italy every year. And every time I go to Italy and I visit family, and this is some of the family after a 6-hour dinner that we have under somebody's pergola, and you know how it goes, it becomes a research project for me at the same time. I'm there and I'm having a good time, but I'm comparing, I'm watching, I'm taking notes. Oh my gosh, 2 minutes. And so it's a research project where I can bring back things to the people that I talk to. Okay, so, and I write my first book, Food Not Meds. It's about the 15-year journey that we took through the medical profession, trying to find answers, only to find, and as the book says, I had to return to the garden. Then I started doing cooking classes at my home. And I would have 10 or 12 people, sometimes 14, and I'd say, come on over, I'll show you how to prepare these foods that are healthy for you. And I could see how we've left our kitchens and we've left our gardens, because I would hand someone a green pepper and they wouldn't know how to cut it. And so this is our backyard with the pergola. We call our house Villa Danca. It's like another reproduction of Italian. And people see, they come together with a community, and they see how easy it is to really prepare food that is healthy, real food for healthy people. Okay, That's the book. And then the book, I'm surprised, has really, I shouldn't be surprised, but it's done quite well right now. I did this yesterday from the Amazon rankings. It's number 19 out of 216,000 books, so I know that people are looking. It has 51 customer reviews, and they're pretty positive. Okay, and so then, this is last month, then I started taking people to Italy. People that I've done lectures with, and I say, let me take you, let's see the lifestyle, let's taste the food. We cook for two mornings with the chefs in the hotel where we stay on the Amalfi Coast, and they absolutely have a ball. The gentleman in the middle on that last slide is a cardiologist also, and he came this time and he gave talks to the group, and we absolutely loved it. This is, of course, under a lemon grove, and people were just amazed at the quality of everything. Last slide is, this is a fusion of some of the people I've taken to Italy with my family as well, and we're standing in front of the old house that has walls this thick that was actually occupied by the American troops in the Second World War. And no one's lived in that house since then. But, you know, my niece here in the pink, I never see her smile like that. Never, ever. She was so happy. And I also could see, and I can tell in my cooking classes and on the Italy trips, that people are starved for what we have. Starved for it. So we need to really keep our culture precious, and we need to express it. And I'm out of time.
A returning veteran and poet and attorney, Adam Sedia, will grace us again this year with his poetry.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As he said, I'm Adam Sedia, or if you're non-Italian, Cedia. I came here from where I live in Indiana, about 45 minutes away. I was first introduced to the Casa Italia last year, and this is my second year giving this presentation, so it's an honor to be back and be enlightened by so many fantastic authors. As he mentioned, I'm an attorney. I practice in Indiana and Illinois, and I'm a commercial litigator, but I'm not here to talk about that. In my spare time, I write music. I have a YouTube channel if you want to view it. I have a novel I'm working on getting published, and I write poetry. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. An interesting background story. My background in Italy, my father's side is from near Naples, and the rest of me is mostly Abruzzese. And doing my genealogy research, I found out through my grandmother I'm actually related to a minor poet named Alceste de Lolis, who wrote during the Risorgimento in the 1850s and 1860s. And I'd like to think it runs in my blood. Poetry for me is the everyday giving you some insight and then wanting to share that insight with others. And we all have something to learn from each other. We all have different experiences, different life experiences, different backgrounds. And the more we learn from each other, the less conflict there is, the happier we are, the more fulfilling our life is. So what got me writing poetry was the desire to share these experiences in the same way that I was touched by what I read from people who wrote across the Atlantic 150, 200 years ago. So I have 2 books out. I have a third I plan on bringing out later this year. Most of my poems have appeared in online journals, and my books are just collections of them that I published on my own. 3 poems I want to read for you today. I actually won second prize in the Society of Classical Poets 2018 competition, which was a nationwide competition. So I will begin with a poem called At Lincoln's Tomb. Be glad you cannot rise to life and stand outside that tomb to die again from shame at Illinois, your home, your prairie land, transformed yet quick to arrogate your name. A land of ruined hope, no longer great, where silent foundries waste away to rust, crack roads, deserted homes disintegrate, and west winds scour the fallow land to dust. A lawless land that drowns in reams of law, and chokes with bloated tomes that regulate, yet leave the regulators free to draw their bribes and rule their fiefs inviolate. A land of servitude, not for one race, but all who cannot flee the taxman's reach, bled out, sucked dry, to gorge the fattened face of rank officialdom's rapacious leech. It gulps its fill of pillage, vomits out largesse to all who have no blood to take, who gladly lap the dregs spewed from its snout, unseen chains stronger far than you could break. Did you, great liberator, loose cruel war, give liberty and even life for this? For this did you face Sumter's cannon's roar and plunge the land in death's blood-tinged abyss? Let it not be so, let it not be so. But you are dead and half a legend too, whom lips pay shallow service, and I know what is destroyed is never built anew. Thank you. The second poem is called Vision. This is a perfect illustration of what I mean. This was an experience. I was driving to work one morning, and my route takes me through a nature preserve, and there was a crane or a heron or some water bird just lifted up in the marshes, and I thought, oh, how nice. One of the last things I would expect to see on a Monday morning drive to work. So I wrote a poem about it. Vision. In the sparkling crystalline morning rays that pierce the translucent lingering haze, through the thick forest of bulrush blades a bird appears. A stainless white heron fans out its wings, cranes his lithe neck and majestically springs, splashing the marsh water's still mirrorings as he uprears. Whence came this spectre that ventures to rise, gracefully, faultlessly, beauteously flies, up from the swamps to the breadth of the skies, above the meres? Take me, O Spirit, with you, let me soar on your soft wings through the heavenly door. Let me ascend, free, unbound, tied no more to wants and fears.
Nice.
And lastly, my last has no title. It's a standard Italian sonnet form. Would that I walked in those far distant days, when angels lighted from empyrean spheres and deigned to show themselves to mortal gaze and speak the words of God to mortal ears. But I must grope and claw my sightless way through winding miles of faceless cold concrete and jagged glass reflecting every way to find a solid path to bear my feet. I have but echoes, distant, dubious, faint, of those clear crystalline angelic tongues, drowned in chaotic tides of babbling din. And yet I hear them, they chide my complaint. The deaf will never hear, the soul that longs for truth has it, a prize for faith to win. Thank you. Any questions?
What is the name of your book?
I have two. The Springs Autumn is the first one, and Inquietude is the second. They can be found on Amazon if you're not interested or unavailable to purchase them today.
You sing spiritually to seek peace
Very much.
and harmony, but you are a litigator as a lawyer.
What we do is we make peace. If we weren't around, people, if they can't solve their problems in court, they go out and punch each other in the street. What we do is we take that hostility and we try and reach a solution. 90% of my cases settle. I don't have trials very much, and that's part of what we do is we try and negotiate with others and convince our clients to negotiate. So we make peace.
Excellent.
Great. Love it.
Okay.
Fine.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Cosmo Kramer.
Dominic, can I say something? For your next presenter, I failed to mention that about Carol Danka, our presenter, Carol Danka. She will present at June 4th at Quartino Restaurant downtown. What we're doing is that every year there is the Italian National Day we celebrate the Italian Republic. And so the Council General has certain festivities every year. So this year, on June 4th, 5th is Monday, on June 4th, we will have a bocce ball league will play bocce outside. And most of you, or all of you, if you are on Dominic's email list, you will receive an invitation. That's for June, for Monday night, June 4th, I believe. And then on Tuesday, June 5th, then Carol Danka will be presenting something, well, the same thing plus, because it will be like an hour, approximately an hour-long presentation at Quartino. So that I just wanted to mention the fact that she will be presenting again, so that when you receive Dominic's email, you will know what's going on. And also the festivities here at Casa Italia on Monday, June 4th. Say June 4th?
June 4th is a Monday, June 5th
So
is
June 4th will be
Tuesday.
here. If any of you are interested in playing bocce, we'll be playing bocce. There will be many different leagues, and you can come. So join us for the Italian Independence Day celebrations. Thank you.
Okay, our poetry reading reminded me of another event that we're planning. It's still in the planning stage, although it's just a few weeks away. On June the 6th, of a celebration of the 40th anniversary of the publication of Gente Mia by Joseph Tusiani. This is important because the Italian Cultural Center, headed by Father Feccia, published the book, and not only that, Father Feccia ran the printing machine to print up the pages for Gente Mia. And Joseph Tusiani has become the premier poet of Italian Americans, plus a whole bunch of other things he does in 4 languages, etc. So our next guest is not a newcomer and is a return presenter, Mary Matury Gibson. She has written a book about her Italian-American life on an Indiana farm, and let's see what she's got for us today.
Buongiorno a tutti. Questa bella giornata è buono. And I am so glad that Carol spoke first, because now people won't look at me and say, Adesta Sedia, because I always talk about my family, and people look at me like, oh, she's got to be crazy. None of that could have ever happened. But now that Carol has mentioned how healthy Italians are, maybe you will look differently at my presentation. So, my name is Maria Evelina Veronica Matury Gibson, and this is my 4th year presenting at the Ialiterate. My father, Nino Matury, spelled M-A-T-U-R-Y because it was changed when he came through Ellis Island, was a World War I veteran who never went to school. But he rose to the rank of Cavaliere in the Italian army. He became a silent movie actor in New York City. And at the end of the silent era, he returned to Italy and married my mother, who only had a 6th grade education. They came to America just a few months before the stock market crash and the beginning of the Great Depression. They became landowners, raised 6 children. I, the youngest of the 6 children, became a nurse practitioner, a captain in the United States Army Nurse Corps Reserves, mother of 2, grandmother of 5, and author of several memoirs, Remembering Strawberry Fields, Entrusted with Their Care, A Nurse's Story, and the soon-to-be-released Against the Wind. So in my quest to connect with other Italian Americans, I joined several groups on Facebook in order to share like backgrounds. To my amazement, I discovered that they knew little about their own heritage. Someone asked, "Do all Italians have curly hair?" Another wanted to know, "Why do I have green eyes? I know I'm pure Italian." Another asked, "Are all Sicilians small, dark people?" None of them liked any of my answers. I reminded them that, first of all, the continent of Africa is a short boat ride away from southern Italy, hence the curly hair. Also, many hours are spent on the Facebook, thousands of them, debating, is it called sauce or is it called gravy? Now, I don't know about you, but I never heard any Italian call it gravy. Oh my goodness. So I did some research and came up with some facts, but in this new age of facts don't really matter, I put them out on the Facebook, but nobody ever likes them. But I will share some of them with you today. First of all, who started Italy in the first place? Well, according to history, it was Romulus and Remus on the 21st of April, 750 BCE. Now, how they got that exact, I got no idea how they could have ever gotten that date, right? Anyway, Italy did not become a unified country until 1861. And this, believe it or not, is in my grandparents' day. Not my my grandparents were children when Italy became united. Rome became the capital in 1870. So for thousands of years, Italy was invaded by all kinds of people, right? From 200 to 800 BCE, it was invaded by Etruscans, Greeks, Latins, Campanians, Samnites, Sabians. Most southern portions of Italy, the people are dark in comparison to their northern Scandinavian neighbors. And this is due to the fact that Muslims and Arabs invaded that area in 1066 through 1081. So, those people are, however, considered Caucasian, even though my father's papers, and I always loved looking at those papers of his when he came to America, it says, race, dark. Birthplace, Sicily, race, dark. I always loved it. In 1494, Italy was invaded by France and England. All these influences are evident in our hair color, our skin color, our eye color, as well as in our food and spices, characteristic and famous for certain regions of Italy. It was King Vittorio Emanuele II, Giuseppe Garibaldi, Count di Cavan, and Giuseppe Mazzini, who united Italy, correct? Yeah, okay, so, therefore, the cry of pure Italian is simply not so, based on history, right? We are not the stereotypical Marlon Brando type, small, dark, mean people. My mother was green-eyed and with light complexion. My father was dark with dark curly hair and dark eyes. In my search in my research, I came to understand that there are no pure races and there are no borders. There are only people, and we are all unique in our own way. Like most of the world, Italians are made up of many kinds of people, and we bring rich history, language, food, and unique physical characteristics to all parts of the world, wherever we may be or travel. I've connected with some of my cousins who still live in Sicily and in other parts of the world, such as Australia. I've connected with a cousin who lives in New York City. He's my mother's great nephew, and he's the president of the Building Congress for the state of New York. He looks so much like my mother, he could be her son. So, my future goal in my writings is to connect people with their history. And not a history that may not be pure Italian or pure anything for that matter, but richly based in many cultures. So I have brought my books with me today, a copy of my 2 books that are out on the market, available at Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. And I also brought some pictures along to share with you today. And Dominic so nicely made that little display up there in the window. But that picture is of my parents in 1956. My father was in his 60s. My mother was in her 40s. That was the only time my mother got to go to Italy and see her mother as an adult. She married my father when she was 18, and that was the only time she ever got to go back and visit her mother. This is my parents in 1935. My mother is pregnant with baby number 3 in this picture. And this is a poem I wrote for my parents, and it'll be in my 3rd book. And this was taken, the picture in it was taken about 1987. My parents lived good long lives. They made it to almost 100. My grandparents on my father's side made it to 100 actually, and my parents almost made it there. But they sort of became a little bit Americanized, as we all do. But anyway, I also am giving away a book today. You know, I love to, so I'll have somebody innocent pull out a name. I always love to give away a book. I always say that you write because you have something to say. You don't write to get rich. So, anybody have a question for me? I'll answer anything. Don't be afraid. Ask.
Someone had said you grew up on a farm in Indiana.
I
Is
grew
that
up.
correct?
Yes. I love this Casa Italia so much because it looks just like the kitchen of the farm where I grew up in Indiana. My parents became landowners. They owned a little farm and they raised strawberries and other kinds of fruit and vegetables, and that's what used to get us through the long, hard winter. Because my father also worked in the steel mill. He had to do something to raise all those children, and without an education and all, he could write his name. And he knew how to count money, but that was about it. He never went to school. My mother went to 6th grade, and my mother, she had all these home remedies for everything she had a remedy for, So it was always, she took care of the animals, she took care of us with remedies, not with medications, and we all survived. One of the favorite sayings of both my parents, and translated, it may lose a little something, but it is funny. When you talk about, the fact that diarrhea was such a problem back in the 1900s. That's when my parents were kids, in the 1900s. I know people look at me and go, oh, God, that woman is nuts. She couldn't have parents that old. Oh, yeah, I did. Anyway, one of their favorite sayings was, "Kid piasa na kagared." And I always wondered what that meant. Translate